So I'm here to actually speak with all of you a little bit about how to build the next skills necessary for the cloud, right? And obviously, since you're chosen here to be here, you're one of the lucky persons who actually believes that this is actually a good thing to do. And this is also what one of my first point is before we actually dive into like, okay, how do I actually get skilled in this? Why was it actually so important to get skilled? And so when we look at the cloud computing usage trends from different companies, there's obviously a huge potential in cloud computing in general, right? You can see that companies obviously are investing heavily in the cloud. And obviously there's also a lot of job opportunity there as well. And so if you look at, for example, how companies invest, we can see, for example, that almost 40% of all enterprises spend more than 12 millions per year into cloud computing, right? And invest into that in different parts of the cloud. So there's obviously a huge growth opportunity as well. And we see that every year becomes more and more companies there as well. Now, if we look at the challenges these companies or general companies are facing with cloud computing, one is very striking, right? So obviously you can see like the general cloud computing challenges we know of, like security, managing, governance, and all that. But then you can also see that the lack of resources and expertise. I can see here like 76% of enterprises have exactly that challenge to find skilled people. And also if they have these skilled people, keep them trained, make sure that they are learning the new stuff, that they're always there to know all about that, right? And so that is obviously for everyone a huge opportunity in that industry to actually become one of these people working in these jobs. So this means obviously that there's again, when I mean opportunity, it's not just all about money, right? There's also other motivations as well, right? There is like, okay, you can find a job like working on something which you're really excited about. It's a job usually where like there is a lot of change happening, where you get a lot of like work with great peoples around the globe, and I will talk a little bit about that in just a bit. But obviously there is like when I speak to company owners, IT managers, they all tell me the same: we cannot find these people, right? It's very tough to find these people because there's just not enough of them. And so it's a wise choice to actually get into that. And I will tell you, it's probably easier than you think it might is, right? To get into the cloud computing part. So the question is, we all have, how can I build these skills for the cloud, right? How do I actually get there? And what do I need to bring to do that? And one of the things I wanted to say really first, cloud obviously is such a large part. It's not just that you can know everything about the cloud, right? There's no single person on the planet who knows everything about every single piece which is happening in cloud computing. It's just impossible because it's so large and it also develops so fast. And so if you want to jump into the cloud computing thing, you can remember that in the past, when you were a Windows Server engineer, you were working on Active Directory, working on Microsoft Dynamics, on-prem technologies, we had these release cycles of like 3 to 4 years, right? So when then people were really skilled, they were working with Active Directory for example, for like 8 years, right? So they had a lot of experience. So for new people, it was really tough to come in and become one of the best there because there already were so many experienced people and they could always leverage these skills. And to be honest, these skills can still be relevant, right? So if you today have skills in some sort of like IT, these skills are also still relevant in the cloud. Might be not so much because you have to learn new stuff, but they're still relevant and you can still take advantage of these. But again, it makes it super easy for people to actually jump into a cloud computing career. Now, how do I get there? And I can tell you one thing, it's really out of your comfort zone, right? It's got to be, you need to like change your mindset in that sense, that it's not something that you learn and then you will do that for the rest of your life or for the next 5 years, not even probably for the next 2 years, maybe not even for 1 year, right? You will need to transform to a person who is constantly learning, and you find learning and getting this stuff, getting about new stuff exciting, so that you can actually keep up with all the things happening. And you also need to feel comfortable about that, right? It's like you need to go in one place, you need to like admit to yourself that like it's a tough situation, and you need to feel comfortable about managing these tough situations and being out of your comfort zone, right? This is just becoming a reality when you're working in cloud, that you work outside of your comfort zone all the time. Now, what I'm actually like, when I prepared for this presentation, or I also gave the talk and others as well, we actually like, I kind of like came up with 4 pillars of how to become a cloud expert. And so the first pillar is obviously knowledge, and I will talk about that in just a bit. But again, this is not just like, okay, hey, I learned this 10 years ago, and now, well, that brings me through my whole career, right? It's not that. It will help you, but it's something you need to keep working on. And that brings me to the second pillar, where it's actually you need to keep learning. You need to do your learning and keep that going on through your whole career, basically. And then, since you cannot do everything alone, since it's impossible to learn everything alone, and especially if you're working with cutting edge technologies, and we have many of these in the cloud, there are not so many books written on this, right? There's not so many experts you can like just ask a colleague. Maybe you're lucky and you have people who have worked with that specific technology, but it's really something you actually need to like understand. Hey, it's not wrong to ask for help. Like even if you are the most senior person in your company doing the technology, like in working in that, the most senior cloud architect, the most senior cloud developer, the most senior cloud administrator, you still need to be not afraid of like asking other people for help, because again, you cannot know everything, right? And lastly, the fourth pillar, actually, and I will talk about that, is very important as well. Enjoy that ride, enjoy that you have a job working in that industry, and actually have fun doing all the time new things, right? I think that is an important part as well. So let me talk a little bit about knowledge, like getting actually this knowledge. So how do people get this? And I personally think that like hands-on experience is one of the key components, right? So you actually need to like start working in cloud projects. You need to actually see how it works, especially like, I mean, again, this is not for everyone the same, but for me, having that hands-on experience is very important. So even we at Microsoft, even if we speak with executive level people at Microsoft, they get their hands-on experience. They try out our own products. They even help the developers out sometimes. They try out things to see, hey, how is this working? And so the same thing applies to you, that you learn about this. The second thing is, obviously, you can't really sometimes, if you're looking for a career change, if you're working on like in a company where you're doing something, but you actually want to transform to become a cloud engineer, but to get actually a position as a cloud engineer, you need to have some knowledge. There's some great, fantastic resources out there. Obviously, I highly recommend Microsoft Docs. So that's where basically our technologies are documented, but then also our Microsoft Learn platform. And that allows you to do interactive learning sessions. And we even provide you with Azure Sandbox environments for free. So you can actually play around with Azure, try out some of the services and build stuff without having a credit card or an Azure subscription and all that stuff you need there. So you get your hands-on experience there as well. And then some key parts to actually build knowledge in general. One thing I see, and this is true basically in the whole, probably in the whole IT industry, is there's a skill to actually be a good troubleshooter, right? You need to, like, even in the cloud, you actually need to be able to troubleshoot certain things. You need to go out and figure out like solving problems, right? Being good in solving problems is key. Like, because you switch from one problem to another, from one challenge to another, from one implementation to another, and actually like by addressing this and like making sure that I can actually go on and have kind of like a system for it, it's definitely a great skill to have. And then last, but probably the most important part of this is becoming a T-shaped learner, right? I told you that the cloud is obviously such a big thing and you can't know everything. So how do I position myself there, and how do I make sure that I'm really a good cloud engineer, good cloud architect, good cloud developers, or any other job role in the cloud? And I like the concept of the T-shaped learner. So that means that you actually have a very broad knowledge. You understand a lot, like of general technology in the cloud. You understand the cloud in general. You understand that there are different services. You kind of like have an idea how they all work together. But then you go, obviously, where the point is needed, you go deep, right? So if you, for example, one cloud engineer and you are more or less responsible for networking, then you probably have a good knowledge about all the cloud stuff, because you still need to be like, need to know how storage works. You need to know how virtual machine works, how PaaS services works, how container stuff works. But then you go deep into your networking stuff. And I think that is also one of the big changes we have seen, is like from these initial silos, we're moving into this like cloud center of excellence, right? And so you, instead of having like different silos and different teams, you probably move all of these together. Now, jumping to the next one, we actually, where do I like do the learning stuff, right? I need to like keep on going and learning this new stuff. And that is something people ask me all the time. They ask me, hey, Thomas, how do you keep up with all the news and the announcements and all the stuff that's happening? And I can tell you it's tough. It's not something there's an easy solution, and don't think that you can keep up with everything. But there are some good resources where how you can actually learn about new technologies. The first thing I want to mention is obviously blogs and community stuff. So there's a big community out there for cloud resources. And there are some really good blogs from different authors out there and community members. And it's a great place to like just do an RSS feed on these and read what they're writing about, because at one point you probably will hit these topics, and you're pretty happy that you learned about it. Another thing I like to do, and it's hard obviously in these times, but it's actually joining meetups, right? Where you have other people sharing their experience, sharing their learnings, sharing their challenges, what they're facing, and like communicate with them. Because not just what you, like in that time is not just important what you learned, like during the presentation, but actually making that connection, making that network. And that brings me also to the next point, is build like a network, a community, right? So get out there and find the people you can work with. And in the past, you might have like people in the same company, maybe people in the same city even. But these days in cloud computing, because of so many technologies are so cutting edge, the talent is basically everywhere in the world, right? And the chances that you have someone like in the house next to you who does exactly the same thing as you do is probably very small. So try to connect online with this great technology we call the internet. Try to connect with others, like using like social media and communities around this. Build your relationships and share your experience, and that will also come back and people will be connecting with you as well. So that is definitely a good part. And then another part is, another question I get very often is, how do I actually know what's relevant for me, right? If I'm a cloud operator, cloud administrator, like let's talk about Azure in this case, by the way, fantastic cloud. If you speak about like cloud architects, cloud developers, what is the relevant things I need to learn, right? And for that, I highly recommend to have a look at the certifications. Even if you're probably not going to take them, look at this, the material. We have these outlines out there which explain what is in the exam, and they're all job role based. So if you're a Azure developer or would become an Azure developer, we have a nice outline which explains, okay, this is like what we think a cloud developer should know. The same thing for cloud architects, cloud administrators, same thing for IoT administrators as well, for example. And we have that not just for Azure, but for other parts of the cloud, Microsoft 365 or Dynamics, CRM, and so on as well. So we also see a lot of benefits, obviously, when you take these certifications. So I highly recommend to check these out. Again, you can see here that this is not something just to learn, but it's obviously also a great solution if you want to actually show your skills, right? It's sometimes very hard to like say, hey, I'm having these skills, right? And because the cloud is so new, it's hard to validate. And so with a certification, you can actually go out and validate these skills as well, and then even ask for raises and stuff like that, which is great. Then the third pillar I was talking about is know when to ask for help and know where to ask, right? And it goes back to building that network and that community. There are obviously great online communities like Stack Overflow if you're a developer. We have the Microsoft Tech communities. This is a Microsoft community site where we have like announcements, blogs, but also forums where you can ask questions. A lot of Microsoft engineers are actually on that platform. And then also obviously a lot of people from the tech community who work on that. And then last but not least, probably one of the main platforms I'm using is social media, right? There are so many fantastic people out there working on different things. It feels like having your colleagues really close by, even though they're probably far, far away. And so this is absolutely a great place where you can ask your questions, but then also share your experience, right? You should give always something back to these communities as well. And then also, last but not least, don't be afraid to reach out, right? This is something I see a lot, is like people mailing others one, or they're not even trying to, like, I'm not going to send that person an email. I don't want to ask, right? It's like probably don't get an answer, but actually do that, because most of the time both sides learn something, right? And so absolutely great. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Admit that you don't know anything about this specific topic, and you will learn about it. And yeah. And then last but not least, really have fun, right? That meaning that if you're in this cloud computing world, where you're really stepping out of your comfort zone all the time, and you really need to know, okay, I need to go and learn new stuff all the time. I need to solve new challenges all the time. It's important that this is fun for you, right? It won't be always fun. Don't believe me that, but in many cases it can be fun if you actually acknowledge that, right? So to get the fun out, what I really like to do is join virtual meetups in these times, or then as soon as we get them back, in-person conferences and so on, which is absolutely great to actually then connect and also have some fun parts, meet people from all around the world, and build these relationships. Also make sure that you actually have a healthy work-life balance, right? I mean, I see it now, especially also, again, I mentioned it again, especially these times, it's super like easy for us to, in the morning, start home office, 7 o'clock, and then work until like 10. And I promise you, you won't probably do that for a very long time if you're going to try this. So make sure that you find a healthy way of working, and feel free to take a break from time to time, right? I think this is not just like, I mean, with that, I mean, not just take a break during the day, like just go and grab a coffee or an hour away. With that, I mean, take a break, even if there's things happening, right? There are announcements every single day. There are announcements with new technology. There are sometimes huge conferences like Microsoft Ignite or Microsoft Build and others. And it's sometimes really, like, I felt like also that this obviously pressures you, because you want to know everything. You want to know, like, as soon as the event is over, you should basically like absorb everything, right? And it's basically just impossible today, right, to do that. And so you need to admit to yourself that, hey, even missing something is absolutely fine, right? I don't need to, it's just impossible to learn all the time. So you just need to be also honest to yourself and take a break in that. And so with that, I actually want to open up hopefully for a couple of questions. And again, also, if you don't ask your questions now, feel free to connect with me online on social media and other platforms. And if I can help you, just feel free and reach out.